The Denver Broncos came out of Sunday's loss against the Tennessee Titans with several injuries to key players, which could mean that some impact players missed time. Plus, a glaring statistic about the Broncos offense reveals how disappointing they've truly been this season. Not to mention, on top of that, what does the team have left to play for this season? We dive into that and much more on today's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.
You are Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, Broncos country? Welcome into a brand new episode, Locked On Broncos, your daily Denver Broncos podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thank you so much to everybody in Broncos country for tuning in and making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day. Free and available everywhere you get your podcasts in audio format, or whether you watch on YouTube. Do us a favor, hit that subscribe or that follow button down below so you never miss out on a day's worth of Denver Broncos news, content, coverage, and more every single day, all year long. Whether the team wins, loses, ties, we have you covered with everything in between here, Broncos country. From the South Stands to the end zone, I'm your host, as always, Cody Roark, Broncos reporter for Mile High Sports. I cover the team every single day at practice, on the road, at home. You get all that coverage here as well, milehighsports.com and the Locked On Broncos podcast. My co-host, Sarah Bettinger, still not with us as he's enjoying some well-deserved time with his family at Disney World. Hope he's having a blast as we talk all things Denver Broncos football here today. And Broncos country, coming off the heels of a loss against the Tennessee Titans on Sunday, the Broncos entered that matchup banged up as is, and they left Sunday's game with even more injuries. We have some injury updates on wide receiver Jerry Jeudy, cornerback KWaun Williams, offensive lineman Graham Glasgow, and Billy Turner, and what it means for the team going forward. So let's start off here with some good news as it pertains to the injury side of things. Obviously, for the Broncos in Sunday's game, the very first play of the game, Jerry Jeudy went down with an ankle injury and was in evident pain there, and it looked like it could have been an Achilles. He got the MRI, and the results came back on Monday showing that it's a mild ankle issue. So no Achilles injury at this point in time. Nathaniel Hackett mentioned to us in his Monday press conference that he will be day-to-day. I don't know if he's going to play in this weekend's game against the Las Vegas Raiders. That's going to be something we have our eye on all throughout the week here when we attend Broncos practice. But I think that's better news, right? A sigh of relief in Broncos country. Does it change how things are going with the offense, though? I mean, Jerry's a very intricate part about what the offense wants to do, and we've seen him in the last couple of weeks really get involved a lot more. And he was going to be heavily involved in the game plan against Tennessee, but on the first play gets injured, and Russ was looking for him on a big play downfield. It could have been there. He had separation on his outbreak there down the deep middle of the field there. Just unfortunate things, and just once again, the injury bug biting the Broncos in the rear end in such a big way. But outside of that, the Broncos will have Jerry Jeudy back at some point this season. Is he going to play on Sunday? Not sure. Questionable at this point. Day-to-day, as Nathaniel Hackett said, but he will be able to play in some games. He's not lost for the season. So that is ultimately positive news here for this Broncos team that could use some positive news at this point in time. Let's go to the offensive line now, though. Obviously, Graham Glasgow left Sunday's game as well with a shoulder injury. Nathaniel Hackett told us on Monday that he is day-to-day as well, and they felt like they dodged a bullet there. So more than likely, I think the expectation is that Glasgow will play this weekend against the Raiders. We'll have to see how he does in practice this week. I imagine we'll see on Wednesday. He may be limited. We'll see if he makes the transition from limited to full. He might even be a DNP on the first day of practice, which is Wednesday at the UC Health Training Center. But I think it also begs a bigger question. Let's say Graham Glasgow is unable to go on Sunday against the Raiders. Who is going to play? Well, Lloyd Cushenberry, he is on injured reserve. It's not going to be him. That means that rookie center Luke Wattenberg would be next in line to be able to get the start there. Now, if that's the case, I'm sure that Nathaniel Hackett and the Broncos coaching staff, even if Graham Glasgow is questionable, even if he does intend to play, I imagine they want to get Wattenberg some more reps with Russell Wilson, because on Sunday when he had to come in, he struggled in a big way. After the game, he did own up to it and says, I have to be better. I have to be more ready for that situation. I think he was ultimately accountable for his performance and really just how the Broncos offense struggled in general. 5 sacks allowed in that second half alone against Tennessee, something changed, and it was a big drop-off from what they had in the first half. So that is an update there on Graham Glasgow. Billy Turner, though, this is the wild card. This is the question mark. He got rolled up upon in Sunday's game against the Titans. He left action. He is considered week to week. Now, Russell Wilson posted a story on Instagram saying, going to miss you, bro. So I imagine he is going to miss some time. The question is, at this point, considering where he's at, and it was the knee that he had surgery on this offseason, part of me wonders, are they just going to say week to week, but are we going to see Billy Turner play another down of football this year for the Broncos? In my opinion right now, just speculation on my end. There's nothing behind it. There's no merit behind it. Just my speculation. With how long it took Billy Turner to get acclimated to be able to play and to start just by having a scope surgery in the offseason, I would be shocked if he plays at all the rest of the season. And truly for the Broncos, I know they signed him to a one-year deal. It's been disappointing. I think he's been good when healthy, but Denver hasn't had him as much as they had hoped that they would have him for this season. So we'll continue to monitor Turner's status throughout the next couple of weeks here on the Locked On Broncos podcast. And now we get to probably one of the bigger injuries right here for this Broncos team. Cornerback KWaun Williams, who in my opinion has been one of the best free agent signings that George Paton has had. I mean, realistically, KWaun Williams, DJ Jones, Alex Singleton, these three guys have been impact players for the Broncos, whether it be on defense, whether it be on special teams. These guys have raised the bar for the Broncos, and that's a good thing. That gives me a little bit more faith in George Paton to say, hey, George Paton and his scouting personnel department, they know what they're doing when it comes to pro scouting. So it gives me a little bit more optimism maybe as to what they might do in NFL free agency that is upcoming. But KWaun Williams is expected to miss at least the next 4 weeks. He will have an arthroscopic knee procedure. He's been dealing with an issue where his knee keeps locking up, and not quite sure if it's the same knee that he injured in training camp for this Broncos football team, but he is going to be out at least the next 4 weeks, potentially 5 to 6. It really depends at this point in time. With the Broncos having 8 games remaining, they may just take the smart route, especially if he has the surgery. He's going to miss the minimum 4 weeks. They may hold him out for the rest of the season to preserve him going into next year, but he's been playing at such a very high level on the defensive side of the ball from the nickel position, a move that many people in Broncos country, including myself, was skeptical of at the very beginning when they decided to let Bryce Callahan walk. But KWaun Williams, you can maybe make the argument he's been one of the most valuable players to the defense in the nickel position. If this weekend more so in particular, probably Asang Bassi will get the start in his place inside the Broncos nickel package. Potentially P.J. Locke as well might get some run there at that position with the injury to KWaun Williams. So we'll have you covered all throughout the week here. Definitely a blow for the Broncos not to have Billy Turner, KWaun Williams, Graham Glasgow potentially, and we'll find out a little bit more about Jerry Jeudy as the week goes on here on the Locked On Broncos podcast. But Broncos country, one of the things we're going to dive into, there is a glaring statistic that is out there about this Broncos offense that really puts things into perspective about where they could be and where they should be. We'll dive into that on today's episode, Locked On Broncos. But this episode of Locked On Broncos is brought to you by our good friends over there at Prize Picks, and Prize Picks is daily fantasy sports done right. And with the Prize Picks app, you choose 2 to 5 players that you're focused on heading into the week, and these players, they'll have a projection that's set by Prize Picks, and you simply choose whether or not they will score more or less than their Prize Picks projection, which could allow you to win 10 times your money on any entry. There's no competing against other people. It's just you versus the projections that are available. Download the Prize Picks app or go to prizepicks.com to sign up and play daily fantasy sports. First-time users can receive a 100% deposit match bonus today up to $100 with promo code Locked On. So if you deposit $100, Prize Picks is going to give you $100 back. If you deposit $50, Prize Picks will also give you $50. Don't forget to enter promo code Locked On at sign up for an instant deposit match up to $100. And our good friends over there at SimpliSafe. And if you've thought about securing your home with home security but have been putting it off, you'll want to listen up, because right now, Locked On Broncos listeners can order the #1 rated SimpliSafe home security system for 50% off. This is their biggest offer of the year, and you won't want to miss it. Now, one of the things I like about SimpliSafe, they were named the best home security system of 2022 by U.S. News and World Report for a 3rd consecutive year in a row. And in an emergency, 24/7 professional monitoring agents use Fast Protect technology exclusively from SimpliSafe to capture critical evidence and verify the threat is real so that you can get priority police response. 24/7 professional monitoring service costs less than $1 a day with SimpliSafe. That's less than half the price of ADT's traditional professionally installed system. And with the top-rated SimpliSafe app, stay in complete control of your system anytime, anywhere. You can arm or disarm. You can check your security cameras. You can unlock your house for a guest. They have a lot of different things that can utilize your house to keep everything that you love protected and secured with SimpliSafe. So don't miss your chance to save big on the only security system that I recommend. And listeners to Locked On Broncos, like I said, get 50% off any new SimpliSafe system at SimpliSafe.com/LockedOnNFL today. This is their biggest discount of the year for the holiday season, so do not wait. Take advantage of it today. That's SimpliSafe.com/LockedOnNFL. There's no safe like SimpliSafe. All right, Broncos country, continue on today's conversation here. Locked On Broncos. Denver now shifts their focus to prepare for the Las Vegas Raiders on Sunday, but the reality of the situation is these teams have issues in their own right. The Broncos, they have an offensive issue. Thank you so much, Broncos country, for tuning in, making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day every single day. Just want to say I appreciate you so much taking time out of your day to listen to us talk and break down all things Denver Broncos despite a disappointing season for them. Thank you so much for making this part of our daily routine. We love doing the show for you here, Locked On Broncos. Let's put things into perspective here with this offense. I think we've all had the conversations. It's not a talent issue, right? I'd say like right now the Broncos personnel, their depth is very tested. All the talent that they've had and that they hoped would be a big part of this offense, they're banged up and they're hurt for the most part. So that obviously is not ideal on the prospects of talent here. But this is a Broncos football team when healthy. They have all the talent necessary, I think, to be a good offense, to make the necessary jumps. We've seen issues with a new coaching scheme. We've seen issues with a new coaching staff here for this Broncos team. Obviously, a new quarterback, new pieces, and new faces all around him. That's not the excuse, though. That's not an excuse for what's going on with this Broncos offense. And there is a glaring statistic that's been going around on social media. I'm sure you have all heard about it or you've seen it. If you haven't seen it, here's exactly what it has said. If the Broncos scored just 18 points in each of their games this season, they'd be 8-1, minus the exception of the Las Vegas Raiders game that they played where they scored more than 18 points and lost, unfortunately, that one to allow Josh Jacobs to go off. Unfortunately, Denver plays the Raiders here once again this week, and Denver's one of their 2 wins. So that's not ideal in terms of the optics standpoint, but the fact that if Denver could have just scored 18 points in each of their games this season, at least 18 points, maybe even a little bit more, they would only have 1 loss on the season. I mean, that really puts things into perspective that the expectations that we all had for this team, they're certainly there. The offense has simply underperformed, and they've done the same thing. I'd say when we look back, sitting at the record of 3-6 right now, this Broncos offense has done the same thing every single week this season. And you know what? Me being at practice every week, me being at games, there's been things that we've seen that are like, okay, hey, if they do this, they can get the offense going. But they've never been able to get to if they do this, right? They've never been able to do some of those things. And if they've done some of those things, it's been inconsistency, right? It's only for a half or it's only for a quarter. And then the rest kind of comes, they fall back down to earth. I think a lot of it for this offense, personnel matters. And Denver's personnel, when you don't have your starting center, when you have a guy, your starting center that replaced your starting center due to injury, gets injured, you have your rookie guy, your third string guy essentially at the position, having to step in late in the game and kind of struggling. I mean, it was really like, hey, welcome to the NFL, rookie, because that's exactly what happened to Luke Wattenberg against the Tennessee Titans. You lose Billy Turner, who you just barely got back several weeks ago at the right tackle position against the Los Angeles Chargers. You lose Cam Fleming, who's been a starter since week 1 at the tackle position as well. Oh, and then you have a multitude of guys. You lose Garrett Bowles with a broken leg for the rest of the season. That can impact so much from a chemistry standpoint, right? And when you have third-string guys, sometimes even some fourth- and fifth-string guys like Quinn Bailey stepping in and having to play. I mean, Quinn was elevated from the practice squad to the active roster and had to step in during the game. It's not ideal, and it doesn't make anything easier for the Broncos. So for this offense, we can say it's the same story, but yet a different day. So how did these injuries on the offensive line really impact the game plan going forward for Denver? And I think that so much of what we've seen with this offense, they want to throw the ball downfield. It's a very pass-centric offense. In my opinion, I think this goes to where we really differentiate some terms here. When you see a quarterback do a 3-step drop, it's usually a quick pass. When you see a quarterback do a 5-step drop, it's usually a deep pass because it allows your routes to get downfield a little bit more. That means your protection has to hold up a little bit longer. And I think the definition of insanity is we've talked about doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. That is what we've seen with this Broncos team. And now with the injuries on the offensive line being the way that they are, and let's just throw the hypothetical out there. Let's say that Billy Turner's out this week. More than likely that's the case. Let's say Graham Glasgow's out this week. More than likely that could be the case as well. Denver will have their 8th different starting offensive line this season. And they are really at the bottom of the barrel in a sense from their depth. They're at practice squad level guys now having to fill in on the offensive line. So that doesn't help an already struggling offense where Russell Wilson is trying to get things going, where Nathaniel Hackett is continuing to struggle as well with just basic concepts, to where, in my opinion, the Broncos have to come out and they got to go quick passing game. I'm talking 1-step drops. I'm talking 3-step drops. Quick pass. Like there was one play earlier in the Tennessee Titans game where the Broncos were backed up a little bit. Greg Dulcich just runs a little bit of a snag route where he just sits in between 2 defenders, catches the ball, turns upfield, gets 11 yards on the play, first down. That's the quick passing game there. Instead, Denver's doing this play action. They're doing 5-step drops where they're really trying to set everything up for the deep ball. And it simply is not there for Denver. And when you're on your backup, when you're on your 3rd-string, 4th-string offensive line guys at several positions, you can't expect Russell Wilson to be able to do the things that he wants to do. You can't expect the offensive line to hold up on a 5-step drop that allows these deeper routes to develop. That, to me, I think is a huge issue. We've seen a pass-centric offense where everything is like, okay, somebody's down there. Let's chuck it downfield and see if anything happens. You're not going to find many instances where guys like Jalen Virgil get behind a defense on a broken play, or Greg Dulcich gets behind the defense on a broken play against zone coverage. You're not going to get that too often, right? You may get 1 or 2 shots a game at that, but you have to take advantage. And Denver did that. Russell Wilson did that against the Jaguars. He did that against the Tennessee Titans in those 2 instances where it happened. That's it. You capitalize on it. You have to build some momentum, and a lot of it is the Broncos have simply gone away from the run, and granted the offensive line, the way that it is structured right now, there is not a lot of consistency and a lot of push as well. So it's hard to get the run game going when you just simply don't have faith in it. And I think that's something that we've seen. Nathaniel Hackett said that their biggest issue has been on 3rd down. So that's why they're passing a lot. But when you're not completing on 1st down, when it's 1st and 10, you're not completing a pass, it's 2nd and 10. When you're not completing a pass on 2nd and 10, it's 3rd and 10. So the Broncos and Nathaniel Hackett, in a sense, on this offensive side of the ball, they are putting the offense in these positions simply because they can't execute due to whether it be scheme, whether it be to missed execution by players, or whether it just be to the fact that simply Denver is outmatched in a lot of assets on the personnel side of things due to injuries. I'm not sure what it is. I'm not trying to make excuses for it, but the Broncos offense has a massive problem. And sadly, I don't think there's anything that they can do this season, though, Broncos country. I don't know if there's any changes that they can make that's going to make the offensive product better, considering where the personnel is at right now, which ultimately is disappointing when you put things into perspective at the expectations that we've all had for this Broncos offense this season, which now begs the question, what does this Broncos team have to play for the rest of the season? We'll give some insight into that from a former coach, from a former player. I'll share my perspective. I'll share what some of the Broncos players have talked about as well, even after the Titans game, about what they still have to do this season. You get that on today's episode of Locked On Broncos. But this episode is brought to you by Built Bar. And let me tell you about Built Bar and their new reimagined flavors that they have created. They have cookie dough topper. They have coconut brownie bar. They have a coconut brownie topper. And they also have a white chocolate peppermint granola. It's Built's take on the granola bar, so it's more filling and still insanely tasty. And they also have candy cane brownie puff. Built Puffs are like biting into the universe's most delicious cloud. First off, for anyone who hasn't tried Built Bars before, they are extremely tasty. They're the best tasting protein bar that is out there on the market today. They're also the healthiest protein bar that is out there on the market today. And when you sink your teeth into your first bite, you're going to understand exactly why I say that is the best tasting protein bar out there. I'm not kidding. Not to mention, we mentioned the macros. We mentioned how healthy it is. 17 grams of protein, 130 calories per Built Bar. And you can try it out today. And I want you to go to Built.com to try your first box of Built Bar. If you're an avid Built Bar aficionado like myself and my co-host Sarah Bettinger, you're going to love all the new flavors that Built has to offer. And you can get 15% off your order right now by using promo code LOCKEDON15 at Built.com. That's going to get you 15% off your order here today at Built.com. As we jump into the fourth quarter action on today's episode, Locked On Broncos, we're going to ask the question, what do the Broncos have to play for the remainder of the season. Thank you so much, Broncos Country, for tuning in and making Locked On Broncos your first listen of the day, free and available everywhere you get your podcast in audio format, or whether you're watching on YouTube. Make sure if you're watching on YouTube, comment on the video, like the video as well for the algorithm. When you do that, it pushes this video and pushes this show out to more members of Broncos Country. Thank you so much for making us a big part of your day. We appreciate you so much, Broncos Country. I think one of the questions when you see a team who's sitting at a 3-6 record, the way that this Broncos team is right now, there's a lot of fans that have given up on the season. And you know what? Who am I to judge, right? Because you, as an avid fan, you tune in every Sunday. You have an emotional investment in the team. You have high expectations for the team. Myself, I cover the team. I see things in practice that give me optimism. Okay, hey, they might do something really well this week. They may do this well. You get to talk to players. You get to hear the mindset that a lot of these players have. I understand the meshing of both worlds here. And for a 3-6 football team, there's a 3% chance right now for the Broncos to make the playoffs. If they win their next 2 games, I think the statistic bumps up, that increases their percentage to make the playoffs to 4%. It's safe to say at this point in time, unrealistic that Denver is going to make the playoffs, even if they go on a massive run, right? So it's like, okay, hey, if the season's over, essentially, that Denver can't make it to the postseason, which is the ultimate goal, right? And their goal is to win the AFC West. That's not going to happen now for Denver. So what do they have to play for? And I think this is something that sometimes gets lost when you have a losing season. In Broncos country, you play for pride, more importantly. If you've played the sport, if you're listening and you've played football, right, even if you've been on a losing team, you played every week to hope to win, right? You did everything you can to put yourself in position to help your team win a game because you love the game. At least I hope you do, right? For me, I love the game. This game saved my entire life. It really did. And for me, we didn't have a lot of success when I played in high school. And then I went to the college level. We won a lot of games. It really changed my perspective there. So when you've been at the bottom, when you've lost games, it can impact your psyche a little bit. But when you get back to winning, you understand how important it is. You understand, like, if this game means something to you, you're going to do whatever you can to go out there and win. And I'd say that for the Broncos defense, I think Jerry Jeudy has really kind of put things into perspective. And even Cortland Sutton spoke to the team after they lost on Sunday to the Titans, and they said, we can't just come in here and just like check a box that, okay, hey, you know what? Things aren't going the way that we wanted. We can't just come in and say, okay, hey, we're just going to come play this game just to play this game. Everybody's fighting for something, right? And even if Denver's out of the playoff hunt, essentially, not officially mathematically eliminated, but I think that from a logical standpoint, a logical perspective, given what we've seen, Denver is out of it. And it would take a miracle, I think, at this point for them to turn it around, which, looking at how the offense has performed, I mean, we talk about it. They just scored 18 points in each of their games. They'd be 8-1 right now. Denver's got the best scoring defense in the National Football League, the number 1 scoring defense, one of the top defenses in the National Football League, and yet one of the worst offenses. And that is something that is the defining factor for this team. But you can't just come in here to just check a box. And I'm glad that Jerry Jeudy and Cortland Sutton said things like that, because these guys are still competing. Like, this is their job. This is what they have to do. They can't just show up and just like, you know what? It is what it is. We're losing. I'm just not going to care. I'm not going to play hard. I'm not going to play well. That's not the mentality of these players. And I can tell you by being in the locker room, talking to these guys are focused on just trying to do their job. They really are. They care about this game. They love this game. They love their teammates. And I think that's another thing. They're playing for their teammates. And for some of these guys, they're playing for contract extensions. Every week that you play in the National Football League, whether you're a guy who's a first-year guy, second-year guy, you're a guy who's on the last year of his deal, you are auditioning, if not for the Denver Broncos, you're auditioning for 31 other teams around the National Football League to maybe get a job. And I think that's something that gets lost when you have a losing season. I don't think fans care too much about that, and I certainly understand. I'm not going to judge that, but I'm trying to share that perspective from someone who's been around it, who's been in the locker rooms, who's been talking to these players. This is not something that they take lightly. This is, it would be easy in a sense to just throw your hands up in the air. You wouldn't discount, like, especially on the defensive side of the ball, with the offense struggling the way they are, defense really doing their job for the most part. It would be easy to get in that situation where it's like, as a defense, we're doing our job. You know what? The offense isn't doing their job. It'd be easy to point fingers, but that's not going on here in the locker room, which I think is ultimately a great sign. These players are close with one another on the offense and defensive side of the ball. This hasn't been this way in years past, right? There's always been a little bit of, anytime the defense is performing well, the offense is struggling, there becomes a little bit of animosity that gets built up. Haven't seen that with this Broncos team. I think that's a great sign. We've said it. The talent is there for this Broncos team. It's just not meshing this year. It's just not gelling. And more than likely, that's going to mean that there's going to be some major changes in the offseason here for Denver. The season is not how players have wanted it to go. Certainly talking to them, this is not what they envisioned. The expectations in the eyes of the players were very high. Coaches were very high. But there's so many different factors that have impacted this team and experience at the coaching staff level, play calling issues, offensive trying to just figure out how to gel in a new system. Injuries have been an all factor. It's not just singular blame on one person. I know everyone wants to blame Nathaniel Hackett solely, Russell Wilson solely. There's collective blame to go around for how the Broncos have played this season. It's not just on one person. It's not just on one position. It is a collective effort because it's the ultimate team game. But at this point in time, Broncos country, the only thing they can do is get back to the grind, which is going to be the case here this week. They're preparing to take on the Las Vegas Raiders, and the storylines that present itself in this game in particular, especially for Denver, really, really high considering the Raiders right now are one of the biggest laughingstocks in the NFL. Considering they lost to a Jeff Saturday-led Colts team, they allowed Matt Ryan to run for 39 yards on one specific play, and it was a demoralizing loss for the Raiders. They're in a bad position right now, but so is the Denver Broncos. So I don't think at this point in time, Broncos country can necessarily laugh at Raiders Nation because mutually, both these teams have issues that are going to be under the microscope this week. They're going to be at the forefront. And whatever team loses, that magnifying glass is going to get massively bigger on the other team's biggest issue that is going on right now. Hopefully the Broncos can avoid that and maybe get a win against the Las Vegas Raiders. That's a good morale boost as is. It's always a great thing when the Broncos can beat the Raiders in the eyes of Broncos country. But Broncos country, thank you so much for tuning into today's episode, Locked On Broncos, on your favorite audio podcasting platform, or whether you're watching on YouTube, thank you for making us your first listen of the day. We appreciate you so much. We'll be back tomorrow for a brand new episode of the show as the Broncos set the table for the week. Will we get any more updates on several key players? Will Justin Simmons return this week from a knee sprain? We'll dive into that and much more on tomorrow's brand new episode, Locked On Broncos.